You might want to mute Ted during the countdown too.
Oh, yeah.
We're back. Welcome everyone to Zoom Back Camera, the online film forum of Notre Dame's Browning Cinema. And at the top of our shows, I have something I like to read, and read it I do in order for it to be as I want it to be said. During these uncertain times that have moved us out of the physical Browning Cinema and into a virtual one, our thoughts are with those battling the virus, battling isolation, battling precarity, and battling the fear inherent to this moment. And alongside that, we want to extend our thanks and appreciation to the first responders, medical professionals, grocers, public transit workers, childcare workers, and anyone else on the front lines. Zoom Back Camera has been a small thing to offer, but we do hope that these conversations about movies we love will buoy your day and continue the education, fellowship, and dialogue with which we like to bracket our films in the Browning Cinema. And as we do in the Browning Cinema, feel free to say hello in the comments, in the chat on YouTube. We monitor those along the way, and anything that you might have to be said, we'll try to incorporate back into our conversation. And thank you to our guest curator for the conversation we're about to have, and that would be Dr. Ted Barron. Hello, Ted, how are you? You got
Oh,
I
screwed it up. Good God.
We'll try it again.
Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going very well. How are you?
I am okay, thank you. How about you tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are and what you do?
I am Ted Barron. Isn't that enough? No, I am the executive.
Dr. Ted Barron. Dr. Ted Barron.
I am the executive director of the DeBartolo Performing Arts Center, where I oversee kind of everything that happens there. And hopefully things will be happening soon. We just announced a new season. Lots of good stuff coming up next year.
Where do we go to find out more about the things that could be upcoming next year?
So we just announced the new presenting series season, which kicks off in September. Matthew Morrison is our opener. Is that of Glee fame? That is Mr. Shoe fame. So if you wanted, and we're looking ahead, we're trying to plan to make sure that I know what you're excited. No,
I'm laughing because a couple of days ago, like I have these like regular moments where I need emotional exhaust.
Yeah.
So I actively went to the wiki page about the quarterback episode, when their tribute quarter to when the character played Finn passed away.
Oh, okay.
And I read it just to have an emotional moment. I was like, okay, I didn't even watch it. I just read the Wikipedia.
That's page. Interesting. That's another conversation to have of what are these things that we intentionally watch to push out the waterworks and like force us to emote. That's not tonight's movie.
No.
But anyway, back to answer your question, performingarts.nd.edu is where we have all of our information, and we're monitoring things in terms of what we're expecting for next year. We're just really hoping for things to make a turn for the better so that we can get back to doing what we do so well, which is to present live events, to screen really cool movies, and to just be kind of the place to be locally for your arts experiences of all shapes and colors and kinds.
Wonderful.
So, hoping that happens. I did also, so just in terms of who I am though, today is the last day of classes at Notre Dame as we're recording this. And I just had my final class session today with my global cinema class, which was really exciting and sad because it's hard to say goodbye to these kids through Zoom. Especially the seniors in the group.
What movie did y'all chat about? What was the send-off movie?
The send-off movie was Pablo Larraín's film No, which was about the effort to defeat Pinochet in 1988. And,
I was going to say, it's the same period as this.
Yeah. So it's another film so it's made in 2012, going back to 1988. Uses an interesting device of this U-matic, makes it look like it was shot on U-matic video, which gives it kind of an added dimension. But it was a good one to end with, in part because it's all a question about one of the questions that I sort of took away from it for them to think about is this film advocating for more kind of accessible forms creative projects so that you reach people, or should you be kind of sticking to your guns about your vision for what's important? Because when the film gets into kind of the decision about what kind of ads they should be running for the no campaign, and it gets into some of that. So but yeah, it was a nice way to end. But it's a bittersweet time of year, always bittersweet because of sending off a group of seniors from college who you develop a relationship with and fondness for, but extra heavy because of the compromised situation in which we're doing this, and the loss of the rituals that we've kind of relied on to make that extra special.
It is also, I mean, with the last day of classes comes the first day of something else, though. And
That's right.
I do hope that people are able to reframe this as, okay, it's time to start doing something else.
Yeah,
and
go
if you're
work
a
at
student,
Adventureland.
if you're a student, it's studying. But,
That's right.
or grading.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I mean, so tonight, so does it, if you don't mind, I mean, for tonight's film, I thought it would be cool to discuss something that kind of marks this moment in not the most not the most uplifting way. Certainly, the circumstances in the film aren't quite as serious as we're dealing with now for the kids coming out of college. But look at a recent graduate whose plans don't go according to plan. And what's the impact of that is.
I think that might track for some people.
Yep.
Well, at the start, we like to place the film which we're discussing in a broader context. And one way we go about doing that is a this or that game. Mm-hmm. So, do you prefer Adventureland or The Graduate? Real bantamweight.
Yeah. The Graduate's so important. Yeah, I kind of have to stay with The Graduate.
Fair. Adventureland or 16 Candles?
16 Candles has a soft spot, but it's got a lot more problematic aspects to it. So I'll go with Adventureland.
Adventureland or Kicking and Screaming?
Definitely Adventureland. I was never a big Kicking and Screaming fan.
Mm-hmm. Adventureland or Funny Haha?
See, that's another. I'm going to say Funny Haha just so people go watch it, in case that inspires people to watch it, because it's overlooked.
Adventureland or Superbad?
Ooh, I'm going to go with Adventureland.
Okay. Adventureland or Twilight?
Can I pass? I've never seen Twilight.
Pass is
I will say the SNL spoof of Twilight might beat Adventureland.
Adventureland or The Social Network?
Ooh, Social Network is so good. Mm-hmm. That might be, I might go with Social Network. And
then lastly, Adventureland or Legally Blonde?
Yeah, Adventureland. Sorry. That's not mine.
These are
made worse. Legally Blonde made worse by the Broadway adaptation. That's the thing. And that's what's most recent in my mind, is seeing a local community theater production of Legally Blonde, which does not endear the material to me. No slight on the performers, many of whom were friends.
Well, let's hop into Adventureland itself. Okay. And we quickly learn via a title screen and the music that we hear that we are in 1987. Mm-hmm. And we get a scene of the end of senior year, senior week party.
Right.
Interestingly done, because we get a lot of tight shots before we have any establishing shots to see the world. Do you like that scene? Does it jive with your senior week experiences? Any memories that align or don't align?
I think when we get to the point a little bit later with the parents, I guess that's a little bit. I'm jumping ahead too much, right? Yeah,
you're fine. Whatever.
If we start at the party scene feels pretty. I mean, I'm going to talk a lot about kind of authenticity in this film, because I think one of the things that endears it to me is that there are just so many moments or so many details in the film that I really kind of identify with, and I think it's pretty faithful to that. Senior week for me, it was a series of parties, but it was also there was also kind of a honing of the pack where, you know, it was trying to maximize time with kind of the quality group as opposed to trying to fit in time with everybody. And you don't really get a sense of James, who's the lead character in the film, his cohort so much beyond his friend Eric, who becomes kind of crucial to set things in motion. But yeah, I remember it being more about just his, you know, kind of the time, maximizing the time with this small group of people, because we knew we were all going to be saying goodbye soon enough.
Mm-hmm. And we then get the update with his parents that things aren't going as planned. He won't make it to Europe. There's financial woe and want.
Mm-hmm.
And his parents, I love Wendy Malick.
Mm-hmm.
I think she should be cast in more things. And Jack Gilpin is his dad, father to Betty Gilpin in Glow, and cousin to Drew Gilpin Faust, president.
That I didn't know. I knew
president
about the
emerita of Harvard.
Right. I didn't know about the Drew Gilpin Faust connection, but yeah, Jack Gilpin. I always associate him with. He's got a great part in Something Wild, where he's one of the guys at the reunion with Jeff Daniels, and when he sees that he brings Melody Griffith, and he gives him a hey. And Wendy Malick, Wendy Malick is Wendy Malick. She's just, you know, she's pretty consistent and doesn't really stretch outside of that. Big salad Wendy Malick is what I would associate her with from Seinfeld.
Mm-hmm. And we wrap up the college experience. They pack up I think it's a station wagon. They head home for a summer in Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that they are rough on Pittsburgh, fair to Pittsburgh, just broadly?
I think, I mean, to me, and maybe I don't know enough about Pittsburgh. I have to, again, I've never been to Pittsburgh. So I have to, you know, sort of qualify things that way. But there doesn't seem to be, this seems to be something that could take place anywhere. I don't know that there's any cultural specificity to Pittsburgh. It's going back to your hometown, and you have to escape in order to get on with your life, is kind of the message. So maybe that's why they didn't kind of go to that specifically. Now, Greg Mottola, who wrote and directed it, he's from Long Island, but I think went to Carnegie Mellon, is so part of his, so that I'm guessing like that's his more observational kind of view of Pittsburgh, or using that as something that he's kind of familiar with. I mean, this would be, you know, because when I think about this film and think about some of the things that are, you know, the authentic things, there's the stuff from where I grew up, which is, you know, in the suburbs of Boston, versus where I went to school, which is in Syracuse, at Syracuse University, and thinking about, and there are things about Syracuse that really ring true in this film. And there are things about Quincy, Massachusetts that really ring true in this film. And maybe that's by design, so that it is just more open to, you know, for people from different communities to kind of experience it, as opposed to making it specifically a Pittsburgh thing. Mm-hmm. But somebody from Pittsburgh might disagree with that.
Well, they're not, I mean, they aren't giving you a lot of the trademark Pittsburgh moments either. Mm-hmm. And they're not like Yinzen. I mean, they're not placing you in the city all that much.
Or even like Me and Earl and the Dying Girl, you know, just thinking about like how in Pitt you get Me and Earl and the Dying Girl is something about that gives me a view of Pittsburgh that does seem more specific because of, you know, the architecture, and, you know, you're in those great neighborhoods with the brick lined streets and the brownstones that just feels more. This is just kind of generic suburbs.
Agreed. And our buddy goes on a search for work.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have a job out of college that summer? Do you have memories of?
I didn't graduate with a job. I definitely didn't graduate with a job. I had been going to the career center, or the job center. Maybe it wasn't even career soda makes it sound more prestigious, where you would just go and they'd have like a binder full of listings, and you write up, you type up a letter and send your resume and hope that you heard something. So no, I didn't have anything lined up. But then when I got home, I can remember, doing essentially what James does, which is you took the classified section of the newspaper and, went to the job section, and you went and you circled jobs, kind of like, something that we see in other movies as well. I just watched Married to the Mob recently, and there's the point where Michelle Pfeiffer goes into the movie, breaks away and moves into the city, and she does the same thing where, she moves to this crappy part of New York and has to circle ads in the newspaper. But you look for, it's the skills, like what are your actual skills? And I had the very practical choice to decide to be an English major as an undergrad. So, there aren't, when you're looking through the help wanted section, they're not advertising for English majors. It's, where do your skills kind of line up? But the job that I did end up getting was as a manager for a Showcase Cinemas. Was kind of my first official job out of college, which was a big multiplex chain in suburban Massachusetts. So there are, again, points of identification with this film, being, kind of the guy who just graduated with his prestigious college degree, going back to a job that maybe he thinks he's better than.
Mm-hmm. And the job that he ends up getting, thanks to Frigo, is at Adventureland.
Right.
Which is Kennywood, which is a stand-in for Adventureland.
Adventureland, yeah.
Did you have an Adventureland growing up? How'd you feel about the look of this amusement park?
I loved it. I feel like, we didn't have a single one. There were probably 3 or 4 different amusement parks like this in suburban Massachusetts, and actually Rhode Island. There's Rocky Point, which is in Warwick, Rhode Island, was a place I used to go to. But they were all just at that stage in my life, which is, in 1987, I'm a few years younger than him. I'm still in high school, but at that stage, a lot of those kinds of amusement parks are just kind of gasping for air. They're really kind of scuzzy, and half the rides don't work, and you're just it becomes just sort of less and less attractive to go to these places. There's usually a lot of crime and stuff happening. It's kind of scaring people off. But the feel of what they kind of present within this is, I think, pretty spot on in terms of capturing that that era of what where those amusement parks were. And that's really before, I think that's kind of right before you have kind of big corporate takeovers of like Six Flags and the larger chains that are that create a cleaner, bigger amusement park experience, but at a much more significant cost.
And on that front, like what's fun about this is our local amusement park was called Adventureland.
Oh, was it?
Well, there was one in Okoboji called Arnold's Park, but then in Des Moines, or actually in a suburb thereof, Altoona, was Adventureland. And so it really circles back on itself in a funny way.
But those are pretty far away for you, right? Like they're not like, these were all like within an hour. If it was an hour, it was a big drive.
No, we had the county fair.
Yeah.
And that was,
that's the thing. We had town fairs. So each town had its own fair, for a week in the summer, where those were more, those were traveling. And there's a lot of that in this as well.
But if you wanted to ride a roller coaster, it was a 4-hour drive.
Okay.
And
so we had easier access to that. But
you weren't necessarily, well, you were day tripping sometimes, but mainly not.
Mm-hmm.
And within Adventureland, we see that James gets relegated to doing games as opposed to rides. I would much rather have games as opposed to rides myself.
Oh gosh.
What's your
Opposite. I wanted rides.
What's your favorite Midway game to play? Do you have memories of a good one?
No, I would always skip the game. I hated like I always thought games were a waste of money. And usually if I went to those parks, I would have a pass to sort of get me into all of the rides. So I would skip over the games. But if I did, I'd probably play like skee ball would probably be the most, kind of, if that counts. I don't know. That was usually more that you kind of did on your own. You didn't have a barker. I didn't like ones where, you had to interface with somebody who was running the thing and potentially going to screw you over.
Right.
Because I did have this baked in distrust of the people in the games part of the park, that they were the seat. It's funny that it's the job that, that the intellectuals have in this film, as opposed, because growing up, it was more like the games people were the real seedy people.
Well, the county fair was the 1 week where you would lock your doors back home. There is a long, like decades old distrust for the traveling carnival worker back in my neck of the woods. This is a little bit different because you're not itinerant. And so.
Yeah. What was your game?
The strongest memory I have is of the BB game where you would shoot out a star on Saddam Hussein's head. So I'm in 3rd grade, so it's coming off of the Persian Gulf War, and you had to entirely shoot out the star, and you could like appeal, like you could take it, and if the person working it said no, you could go to someone else and say, no, there's no red left on this. And so I remember this line of like this appeals court line saying like, no, I got Saddam. And you would win. That was the moment of the really weird knockoff Bart Simpson thing. So
oh wow, that's a lot of trash there. Yeah, there was I do remember winning at a guess your weight thing, because my build is odd in that I have a big torso but skinny arms and skinny legs, so it sort of throws off the weight prediction. And I was thinking like, I'm gonna go back and do this again, because he was like way off.
That's your moneymaker. So we get a handle on the interactions. We meet Paulette, Kristen Wiig, who is very, very used sparsely, along with Bobby, Bill Hader.
Right.
And we also meet Case Stu playing Em or Emily.
Yeah. Well, just on the Bobby and Paulette front, is this just like, so this is when they're both on Saturday Night Live. Bill Hader's coming off. He had just done Superbad with Greg Mottola. So it's almost like they kind of did this as a favor. Because it is a pretty understated. I remember the first time watching this thinking like, oh, I'm going to watch this because of them, because I like them on Saturday Night Live. And they felt underutilized. I like them more watching it recently, because I think they actually do a lot with a little, a lot of their stuff. So
well,
anyway,
well, along with that, I mean, the way this film was marketed, it felt to me, I remember like first seeing it and be like, oh, this is going to be like a Cheech and Chong amusement park movie starring Kristen Wiig and Bill Hader. And I was sold that bill of goods, and that might have been my own projection. That is not what this film is.
No, it's totally, they tried to push it as kind of this wacky, Judd Apatow. I mean, Judd Apatow has nothing to do with this film. He's not, I don't think he has producing credit or anything. And this is in his imperial phase, I guess, of where he's everything has got his name on it. But I remember I shared this with you before, the tagline: long hours, low pay, high times. Definitely we're thinking we're getting in Seth Rogen territory, and it doesn't really do that at all. It doesn't even not. I mean, it just doesn't do that. It's not what
Right.
this is.
Right. And we have various moments of bad guests, but the one that families that cheat together fascinate me. If it's, little league games, for me it was always tennis tournaments, or standardized tests get you into college, whatever. So the knife panda cheating moment is interesting to me. But do you like how they construe the guests and having to interact with them, sometimes ornery, sometimes confused group of people?
Yeah, I mean that again. That feels like who is the clientele for this, and it feels pretty faithful to what they would have been dealing with. Yeah, is it the ring toss? That's the ring toss, right? When they have to, he breaks the cardinal rule. James breaks the cardinal rule and loses a big ass panda because M walks over and is like, "You're not going to get knifed over this." So it's yeah, those, I think part of it is just, the behavior, but there's also something about the look of those characters, especially the guys we see later on, who we'll probably get to. Those guys are dressed right out of '87, and that feels, again, these details that give it these kind of marks of authenticity.
I actually have an Adventureland story. So when we were in 5th grade, we went to Adventureland, previous Zoom back camera guest Paul Rust and I, and there was this group of high school students who were performing a medley of Beatles songs, and we were there, and we were generally very dismissive children and laughing at them and not with them. Yeah. And at the end, we took a piece of paper and we wrote on it this is the worst band I've ever seen. And then we folded it over top and asked them to autograph it. But then so we went up to them and said, "Can you autograph this for us?" And they took it from us and said, "Oh yeah, we'll have everyone sign it." So we spent the rest of the night in absolute fear, walking around the theme park hotel that we were going to bump into them. And we finally did. We were at the top of the stairs and they were at the bottom, and they said, "We know what you wrote." That's awesome. And so that is, whenever you see those scenes, I'm like, oh gosh, my heart goes out to you. Yeah. Workers, you deal with.
Yeah, I can't think of any hostile confrontations in those things. I can remember there was a carnival or a town fair. It was in Brockton, Massachusetts. And they had a green screen where you could make your own music videos. But you had to lip sync, so I had a group of friends that really got into it and prepared. Okay. So we did. There were 2 or 3 songs that we did. The most memorable probably being the Fat Boys version of Wipeout, which was just painful. If that video ever resurfaces, I'm calling it a
day. So work continues, and there's highs and lows. Yeah. We meet Connell, who appears to be somewhat in a rut. I don't think Ryan Reynolds' Connell looks very evocative of 1987, but
he just looks like Ryan Reynolds. And
yeah, he looks like he couldn't get a haircut because he was doing a different movie.
Yeah.
And
I think, yeah, there is. I mean, but there always, I mean, again, that character, and I don't know if that character is familiar because of, other examples from television or movies, or if it is actually, those kinds of guys that were always hanging around who just never left.
Oh, I think that's the trope. Idealizing someone who's older, who's in a space, and then coming to terms with the fact that they are not who you want to become. I think that's a Buildings Roman trope.
Yeah, there's another film that probably fits in with this is The Way Back,
All right.
because the Sam Rockwell character, he's more of a, he's more of a mentor. I mean, there's aspects of Connell where he's supposedly trying to mentor James, but he's always got his ulterior motives with M. He's going to try to just break that up. So.
And James and M start to get connected here. They party in the parking lot after work, which felt very sweet. How do you, and then you learn that, he's going to Columbia after graduating from Oberlin. She's at NYU. How do you feel about this high-end pathway into labor that is often ridiculed, that being carnival work? But I mean, this could have also been working at a fast food restaurant, or various forms of labor, right?
Sure. Yeah, because she's doing the job just because she has nothing better to do, right? That's essentially her motivation for work. He's
potentially wants to drag her dad down.
So she's doing it as a way to kind of shame, because they have money and they can, she could afford not to do this. So it's a way of, she keeps trying to find these avenues to getting real, whether it's through music or relationships, or the job. He's doing it. James is doing it because he's just desperate and he needs the money, and which is something that, again, that's a position I can kind of feel like, coming out of college and just being as broke as you could ever be and not having any of the support mechanisms that life in college provides for you in terms of housing and food and
friends.
Yeah, exactly. So you do this, and then you sort of plug yourself in. They don't, and that's maybe that's a weakness of the film, is that it doesn't do enough to kind of flesh out the characters who are, well, I guess maybe we get that through Joel to a degree. I mean, Joel is this intellectual, but we do see where he lives. We see how he lives, and that he's not, he doesn't really have a sense of possibility that these other characters do. Maybe that's the one place where we can locate that, but the other characters just tend to be more, kind of drawn by ethnicity, religion, those kinds of things that come up. So,
but there is an interloping class, and that separates itself from the other workers, I think.
Well, and it's, they always have an escape. They always, that this isn't, as desperate as James might be, you feel for him in the moment, but that he's always that he's the kind of, he's presented as the kind of character he's not long for this job. And it's a seasonal job, so it kind of has that constraint on it that allows them to kind of, have other plans made. It would be interesting to see, what is it that these other characters do off season. But that's that adds a whole other dimension to the film that maybe there's not space for. But it would answer some of those questions.
We get a party at M's house. We learn a little bit more about her background, that her mother has passed away, does not like her stepmom. Home is not a good space generally. And her relationship with James continues to grow. Well, we also learn that Connell and M have a fling working as well. And along underneath the amusement park, the driving in the car, the parties, there's a lot of heavy lifting being done by the soundtrack, which to me feels like it's of, well, three minds really, but two main. Well, first of all, there's the music done by Yo La Tengo, that's on one side. And then there is the music to kind of make you sure that the film / filmmakers is cool. Like this is the Lou Reed side of things. And then other music that is meant to place you in this world, in the time, I guess.
Right. And you have
And they
two.
play off of one another quite a bit, I think.
Yeah, well, and I think there's some interesting crossover between that, because I was thinking of it, as I was first trying to sort of think about the music of the film, I was compartmentalizing it that way. But there are some instances where you have that kind of crossing over. But because you have, and even within the, the things that put you in the place, you have the music that's the music of the park, and then you have the music that's very specific to the nightclub, which that's those as I watch this, those are the things again that feel like, whoa, it's not nostalgic necessarily, but it's definitely kind of, paying attention to what was going on then and kind of bringing things up that you would have, forgotten. There's amusement park music. I can remember going to, I can't remember which park it was. It might've been Rocky Point in Rhode Island, and they played the song. I don't know if you remember the song "Let's Go All the Way" by Sly Fox. It is like, it's a perfect amusement park song because it's got a like repetitive dum dum diddy diddy dum, beat to it. And I can remember being in the park and hearing that song, and it was probably like 3 or 4 years after it had come out, but it felt so dated already, and it made the park experience feel so dated. So there's something about, like, the fact that they're playing Rock Me Amadeus repeatedly in 1987, after that song has been literally played to death in 1985. It's, it kind of, it's playing up the sort of lameness factor of that, as opposed to the, let's get into M's car and listen to Husker Du or something. So there's definitely, there are these demarcations that happen with the song, but in some cases the cool songs are a little bit, maybe a little bit too forced, and they don't necessarily play as cool as they think they are. And maybe some of the songs that aren't so cool are kind of amazing.
Yeah. I would agree. When Let the Music Play shows up, I love it. It's great.
In My House by the Mary Jane Girls, great song.
Mm-hmm.
But perfect for making you feel like you are in that kind of nightclub in 1987.
Well, and in that, so we meet Lisa P, and then there's energy. I can't remember if she pushes it or not, but we end up going to Razzmatazz, where we hear this music. Was there a kind of scuzzy young person's club in Quincy?
There were several. There were because you had like the suburban clubs, but then you did actually, I grew up outside of Boston, and you had ones that were actually in Boston. The one that I think of most often, which I could never get into because I was always too young, but my older siblings would go to, was a place called Aquarius, which makes it sound like it's for middle-aged people, but it was for younger. My older siblings would go there, I think, when they were underage, and it was just like a cheesy club that people would go to hook up, and you'd listen to kind of trashy pop music in the early to mid 80s. It was located underneath the bridge between Quincy and Dorchester, Massachusetts. So just across the river from the city limits. So you're not quite into Boston, but you're near it.
It was literally under a bridge.
It was literally under a bridge. It was actually part of a hotel that was like kind of under a bridge.
Oof, making it rougher.
Yeah.
They ride home. We hear Pale Blue Eyes.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Multiple times. Velvet Underground ballads, to me, never signal a strong foundation for a relationship, but we'll see where this one's going to go.
They're good for heroin, but that's.
And as often the case, we're returning to work. So there is this nighttime letting off steam and then cycling back into work.
Yeah.
And we don't have a sense of time, really. We get one demarcation when we learn it's 4th of July, roughly. There's a patriotic thing.
Yeah,
But
and I guess one of the bloopers of the film is the Reagan clip that's in the film.
mhm.
Is it Reagan's on TV at some point? Um, that's before, that happens before the 4th of July, but the actual event happened after that. Thank you, IMDb.
I was curious about that because I remember 87. I don't know. So then we see the web of summer relationships coming together. We have M, we have Connell, we have Lisa P, we have Joel, who is someone on the outside looking in. And we have them just smoking weed and
Right.
hanging out.
Which is how it becomes a Judd Apatow movie, or it becomes, in the, supposedly has enough of that they could try to market it as such anyway. But it doesn't, but even those, those scenes are not played. I mean, they're played as just like people who are just have nothing better to do than to just sit around and smoke weed. It doesn't, it's not used in the way that that's used in other films from around the same time, which is, it sets off a caper or, or something else.
Mm-hmm. We have a question. Comment on the weed as currency in the film, or what gives, in this case, I think it's primarily James is the one who has it, right? He's the one with that capital, right?
Eric gives him a big bag of joints when he leaves college. And so James, yeah, I think James it does help him feel like less of an outsider because, in the prior scenes, you've got Frigo, who the Frigo relationship is kind of interesting because on the one hand, it's like Frigo's bringing James back down into his world. Like James is not better than him because he spent 4 years at Oberlin. And so Frigo, that's why we get the ball tags. Is that the polite way of saying it? But he's constantly trying to, like, anytime he gets because one of the times that he gives him a punch like that is when M first invites him to ride home with her rather than go with Frigo. So you have to think that James is James having access to weed gives him kind of a coolness currency with the rest of the people in the park.
Mm-hmm.
And so they don't see him as this kind of nerdy outsider.
Mm-hmm. And it is what it's as in for, what we're led to believe is in for Lisa, Connell. It gives him mobility in the movie and social connections. And we have various relationships build and bud. We hit 4th of July, James and M are making out when the parents come home. There is the intercom system in M's house was in our house as a kid. And so I actually took pictures of both the main one and the smaller ones and sent them. And that was a touchstone, authentic moment for me, having those in there.
70 houses in the 70s that had those were the really cool houses. They were usually, it was because it was like the most unnecessary thing, to have.
Right. We were in a ranch. It's very easy.
My brother bought a house in the 90s that had one of those systems, and he's like, why would you just go upstairs and get knock on the person's door, as opposed to, are you that lazy that you can't just go and get them? Of course, I now text my children in different areas of the house, just to get an immediate response.
We're continuing the cycle of Connell, James, and M, where Connell is mining James for information regarding M and giving him advice while keeping James in the dark about their tryst. So any thoughts on kind of him as a character, as a person? We touched on him a little bit. Yeah, Connell, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, you know, is he just someone who kind of shows up in these kinds of stories, or is he someone authentic? I mean, these guys who've never left, they're too old to be part of their. I mean, I can think of, you know, sort of social situations from my younger days where you would have, you know, who is this older guy that keeps hanging around, and you know, is it because like he's just, you know, it's this older guy that dates younger women? You know, that's certainly, you know, something that's been out there before. The whole thing about him, what's this, that he supposedly played with Lou Reed as part of his character. Um, yeah, I was, you know, I don't know. I mean, in some way, in again, like they're pushing. There's so much being pushed with Lou Reed and the Velvet Underground already through the soundtrack, and even Yola Tango, you know, scoring the film in a kind of velvety style.
Mm-hmm.
It just seems like that, you know, that is just, are these just sort of surface kind of markers of, again, the film's claims to coolness? I don't know. I think most of it, I mean, that stuff, a lot of that stuff works really well, but in terms of, you know, does it really, uh, does it give us anything about James? I mean, ultimately, when we learn, you know, that it's all, you know, not true, or, you know, the subtle, the not so subtle reference to it not being true, you know, that it maybe just kind of sets up that turn in an easy way.
Mm-hmm. We have the they're moving in and out of clubs. I mean, part of what makes this narrative kind of tricky to unpack is that it is repetition, and I mean, you're either on or off the clock. And when you're on the clock, it's very mundane.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're off it, it's trying to recapture that glory of college in some ways. So
right. Yeah, no, so go ahead.
I was just going to say, the plot itself is meant to be very cyclical. So
right, but then they end up going to these places where, you know, if you go to these nightclubs, you know, these aren't. I don't know that anybody that looks back nostalgically on those kinds of spaces. There's a, you know, even though they're very bright, and in, you know, you know, the music that's playing is very up. It's not as if people are looking to kind of reclaim those kinds of experiences. You know, if anything, the film seems more kind of tied to, you know, the brief glimmers of joy that they get in the amusement park versus what they get outside of that. And that maybe that particular, I mean, where that particularly comes out is, you know, the bumper car ride when they're listening to The Cure, and The Cure is like most romantic song, you know, that it's just, you know, we have to play this up as something really, you know, idealistic within this world.
And I do like how, I mean, they're creating a very liminal space, and they're doing things to show the awkward transition phases, like trying to take Lisa on a person, like a one-on-one date to the Velvet Touch.
Mm-hmm. That's the name of the restaurant. More velvet references.
Lots of velvet. And those moments when you're, you know, 22 or whatever age,
yeah,
where you go ahead and try and sample things from things you're supposed to be doing in your 30s, because what else is there to do?
Right, but you know, and maybe that's where, you know, Matola's a little bit too tough, because he, you know, you've got Lisa who, you know, when they get the wine glass, she sniffs the side of the glass as opposed to, you know, sniffs it properly. James seems a little bit more in his element in that place, but at the same time, like, that place is, you know, it's a weird, that's another weird kind of element of it, in that, you know, it's supposed to be this nice dinner, but it's just a not a very well laid out restaurant in like a strip mall, that, you know, probably serves kind of mediocre Italian food.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that gets, I mean, this is where the class issues are coming in somewhat subtle, somewhat not ways. where, Lisa is, her dad's out of work, and James is in a more comfortable position in terms of his capital, financial or cultural, it seems. And this is the place where you connect and play it out. And it's not a hit, but then they go back to something equalizing, which is getting stoned, and they kind of reconnect.
Yeah.
She does pose the question, would you rather have a sailboat or a speedboat? Do you have an answer?
At that age, I would have said speedboat. But now I would say sailboat, because I think it's the, I would think it would be more noble to learn how to sail.
I think I'm speedboat all the way. Sailboat's too complicated. I'll just go slow on the speedboat. I'll just park it or something. We have then James feeling bad about it, so he brings the pot cookies as a sort of peace offering, and various hijinks ensue. But again, very low-key, stress-driven things. It's not played for broad laughs. It's rather, this sucks, I'm gonna get beat up. There's something really heavy and overcast about the experience.
Well, yeah, the stakes are so small, but yet they become so consequential for, because you've already established this world where, we are in this, kind of functioning through the mundane aspects of these characters' lives. And just by the way, I think in terms of, we talked about, how Ryan Reynolds is maybe an odder fit within the film. I think, I've told you before, and this is maybe a controversial opinion, but I'm a big fan of Jesse Eisenberg. I think he's, there's something about him that really works in this kind of context. And I also think Kristen Stewart's great. I mean, I think she's as she's becoming this megastar because of Twilight, she's doing, she's starting on this track of making these kind of other kinds of choices as an actress that allow her to be, something other than just this starlet that she could have been just by kind of following the trajectory of those of the Twilight movies. So it's really well cast.
And Martin Starr has his most emotional scene then when James goes and meets him at his house, and he's not willing to let him in because he's ashamed of it in a sweet way. Thoughts on that scene?
Just where they're hanging out in the yard and the brother comes by with the lawnmower. Again, I mean, it's just these are the detail touches that kind of work really nicely. I think for me, I think, Martin Starr as a character, he is it's funny because James keeps looking for these people to kind of direct him toward the right path, or, just to sort of help him get by. And you've got the influence of somebody like Connell. I think even Lisa P ultimately serves as more of a guide for James than she does as, a kind of a romantic interest. He actually learns, because she likes to gossip, he learns things from her about, some of the other characters' relationships. And Martin Starr, I think, just kind of gives him, helps him to sort of just kind of chill out about everything and just recognize that, it all, and, you can either see it as all kind of being terrible, or, you could just kind of accept it for what it is and take pleasures in, the affectation of smoking a pipe, if that's what it's going to take for you to kind of get by.
The truth of relationships starts to come out after that. Frigo, by way of Rich, lets James know about this, that, and the other thing. And then James lets Lisa know. I'll just say the rumor mill at Adventureland starts to go into high octane, or not even really. I mean, it's pretty mundane.
Right.
the way things are getting around. But it does come back to M, that people know about him in Connell by way of a guy who played Rush at a talent show. Did you have any memorable talent show performances around this time?
Around this time,
Anything that you remember, like people?
yeah, I remember being on this really weird retreat. It was like it was for the seniors in high school, and it was supposed to build us as, I went to Catholic high school, and it was supposed to kind of build us up as, we were going to be the leaders of the class. And we did something where, like, we put on a show in the middle of it, and I was supposed to be, and we did like a dating game, I think was what it was. And I decided to be this character named Vinny, who just walked out with his shirt kind of ripped open. And my big move was I didn't know what else to do, like, because we just kind of planned this with like not a lot of forethought. And I had my hair slicked back and I had sunglasses. And then I remember taking a comb out of my back pocket and combing my chest in the middle of the sketch, and it brought the room to like everybody like busted out laughing, like I'd never gotten a laugh like that before. That's in the summer of 1987.
Hey.
So when you say that time, that stands out. Better
than trying to be a Rush drummer.
Exactly. Yeah, kind of hard that's kind of a hard role to fill. Although apparently there's an opening. Sorry, may he rest in peace.
So then M breaks up her parents' party. Mm-hmm. A very uncomfortable living room interiors kind of party.
Yeah.
Where her parents are standing and everyone else is sitting. And this for me is a moment where the film's tone is always pretty, I guess, dark, or whatever you want to say, kind of drab, yeah, hangtooth. But at this point, it takes a different kind of turn, I thought. Do you have feelings on this last act that we're heading into and how things start to come together at the end of the summer?
Well, the scene you're specifically referencing, I mean, this is about, kind of trying to build more sympathy for M, because she's so disconnected in her home life that, her stepmother's again, maybe played a little bit too broad, to give her a foil where she can, she literally rips the wig off of her head. So it's setting up, M as this, just really kind of, she's falling apart in a lot of different ways. And so it's trying to get us into that of why these things are happening. It's partly because of, her romantic relationships, but also of what's going on at home. But, in reality, she's going back to NYU in the fall. Like she's pretty well set if we really think about it. When you say the last, are we talking about just sort of where James catches M in her relationship with or meeting with Connell, and then they have their confrontations?
Yeah, and they go back to work, and he learns that, those things, learning that, getting drunk, having the car crash, things like that.
Right. So yeah, I mean, so these are, although the car crash is the other thing about the kind of lead in with the car crash is part of that is to reveal the dad's secret drinking, because there's a bottle of hidden under the driver's seat, which explains his dad's inability to hold a job, because Jack Gilpin doesn't come across. Jack Gilpin is very stable,
right?
But there's the fact that he's got a drinking problem.
I read it as that is him coping, like he's losing his job, and so then because of that, he's drinking.
Maybe. I thought there was a suggestion at one point that he has lost his, that's been the cause of it. But anyway.
Well, and the old fashions in the beginning too, I guess, come to think of it. But the other thing is, what's interesting about it is it's not stated really, right? Like, It's not laid out cleanly.
No, it isn't. It isn't. That's what I'm saying. Like that's where, you know, I like when it
Like
works in more subtle ways.
Yeah.
So I do like the fight between the two of them, because I think it shows it shows the potential. You know, when you're looking at those two as actors at that stage in their career, it shows that I think it just shows that they have something as actors. And so that was, you know, I like that moment of just seeing, you know, how she breaks down, how he gets frustrated. I think there is a degree of, again, there's some marks of relatability in terms of, you know, why these two people who would seem to be so perfectly matched for each other would be kind of at each other at this moment, in the way that they go at each other. Seems to be, it just seems, you know, it seems reasonable, even though it's a breakup essentially. So that works out, that I think works out well. The, you know, the ultimate kind of move in the third act toward, you know, bringing the two of them back together, I think that's maybe going a bit too far.
Mm-hmm.
For assessing that, you know, sort of how all that plays out.
Right. So after James has the discussion with Joel about Henry Melville, and what your motivation is for the next phase. And is this, you know, this film is, I think, tapping into something that's going to be on a lot of people's mind, which is take a gap year, y'all.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
well, that's the thing, and that's partly why I wanted us to kind of take a look at it, was that, you know, what is this proposed for us when if things aren't going to go as planned after your non-graduation happens, what paths does it suggest? But, you know, I mean, you get this, it seems to be, it's another opportunity to throw in a really good replacement song for his soundtrack to New York.
What when you get off the bus or whatever, the plane, and you arrive in New York City, do you have a song that you like to listen to?
I like one of my favorite airport walking songs is Close to You by the Carpenters. It's got a good kind of loping kind of that matches the gait that I have in airports. But the obvious one for New York would be Ace Frehley's New York Groove.
I play it every time. I love it.
Isn't it, even like, have you seen Inside Job, the documentary about, yeah, I mean, it's used in that that credit sequence is fantastic.
It's a great song. And it's like, when there's something kinetic about it, where it's like, oh, I'm going to tackle this city.
Yeah.
Well,
do you know the earlier glam versions of that song as well? There's some earlier versions, which are great as well. I forget who's.
I can't remember what trip it was, but I did an Ace reel, and then I started listening to it. Like, I would just show up at the office. I'm like, okay, this will get me going.
Yeah, I think that's the only highlight of those Kiss solo albums. Just by the way, there were the 4 Kiss solo albums that came out, and that's Ace Frehley's song.
It's a great song. It's a great get off the bus song. Okay, so feelings on him showing up in her apartment, all soggy from the rain, putting a bow on this. Do you think it's unrealistic, as someone has said in the comments?
It's unrealistic. Yeah, of course it's. Well, first of all, her apartment is unrealistic, even in 1987, I think.
We assume she's in the Village. She's at NYU, I guess, right?
Yeah.
So, no, you don't have that case, dude.
And what's he going to do? He's going to go to the Y. He's going to go move into the Y and
for a week. Yeah, maybe if it's 1957. I don't know.
No, I think it's, there's a little bit, it just gets a little bit too tidy. I mean, you know, is it, you know, them you know, their moment in the rain, are we in 4 weddings and a funeral territory here? It's just like, it sort of loses its track. And maybe it's, you know, because, I don't know, they needed to kind of stress the romantic elements of the film, but it just feels, it feels unnecessary. They could have tied that. I think they could have suggested something optimistic for the two of them without, you know, being that literal.
Mm-hmm. This to me feels like something that they shot after they tested it. Like it's so like stuck on the end and disjointed and very simple. Like it's, I mean, it's just the two of them. It could have been shot in a day, really. Like there's some, yeah, there's something I think that is very artificial about it. And go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I think most of the film was shot in Pittsburgh, by the way. And so like, is this, I would be shocked if that ending scene was actually shot in New York City.
Oh, right. Well, yeah, they just got some establishing shots and
went
with it. Right. Or even a sounds. I mean, that apartment almost felt like
they could do all of that on a soundstage. They could just, you just got to have your rain machine going.
Yeah. But there wasn't. It wasn't short enough to just like push you gently, like shove you somewhere. But it also wasn't meaty enough for an actual scene. It just felt It felt odd.
Well, he has to, and it's in one of the things that comes up, which I think is again the something that's perhaps evocative of earlier days, is awareness of virginity. Like knowing who's a virgin and who's not. there seems to be this hyper awareness of this, which I hope to God kids today aren't in the same boat. But you have to have him, you need that scene because you have to definitively show that he has lost his virginity. Just like Steve Carell at the end of 40-Year-Old Virgin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they don't even give you like the post-coital like bed shot. They just
no, but they give you enough of it to say that he's it's gonna happen.
Yeah. So his whatever journey vision quest summer has been completed because that's what needed to happen to move him to the next phase of his life. It's pretty, yeah, it gets pretty, I don't know. It gets a little hacky,
but final song, freaking great song. In Excess, Don't Change.
It is a good song.
Love it.
And when you watched it, did you catch the Easter egg in the credits?
Oh no, I missed it.
There's a very good fake local commercial for Adventureland.
Okay.
That they nail. Like as odd as that ending scene is, the verisimilitude of their commercial is really good because they go in and out of sound. It's very well done.
Maybe they should have worked that in sooner so you weren't just left with the. But they wanted a happy ending. Mm-hmm. So you get it. You get a version of a happy ending.
There we are. Okay. Anything else on Adventureland that needs any rides to ride? Any games to game?
The Scrambler was always my favorite. I did want to share that in terms of the ride. Although not a fan of the Tilt-A-Whirl, which is where
I was going to say, I like the Tilt-A-Whirl.
Tilt-A-Whirl to me, so I associate that with feeling like I'm going to throw up. Whereas the Scrambler, maybe it's the motion of the Scrambler. I like the whipping aspect of it as opposed to the twirling around.
Mm-hmm. The Rock Plains were the scariest at the county fair. Mm-hmm. And at our Adventureland, anything wooden felt like it was going to like Final Destination 3 me at any point. So
you know how we have these moments in our life where we're embarrassed to the point of that it stays with us for the rest of our lives. Mm-hmm. So one time at Rocky Point in Warwick, Rhode Island, may it rest in peace, I was with friends and we were going up to this ride that was, you get in a cage the cage goes up a ladder and then it drops. Mm-hmm. That I don't know what that's called, the drop or whatever.
Yeah, essentially, yeah.
And I can remember waiting in line. It was really hot the day we were there and I was feeling like really dehydrated. And then I could feel myself getting sick watching the thing go up and down. And so then I said, I can't do it. And we got to like almost to the front of the line. I was like, I can't do it. I'm going to meet you guys afterwards. So I had to walk, but I couldn't go to the exit. I had to walk through the line of people. And I remember a kid who was probably up to my kneecap looks up at me and says, "What are you, chicken?" And what do I say? What do I say? I should have vomited on him, but
Yeah.
but I was like, I am completely ashamed.
Those Rhode Island kids have a lot of moxie, so I'm not surprised that they would call you out.
That's the way it goes.
Hmm.
Yeah, but no, I mean, I just, again, I do, this is a hard film to kind of go through plot point by plot point because so much of it is just, it just gets the feel of these places down, whether it is the cheesy nightclub. Did you ever go to, there's a nightclub in the New Haven area called Boppers? Did you ever go to Boppers when you were in New Haven?
No.
That might have been
Toads. Toads was the one nearby
us. Toads was more of an institution. This is like, Boppers is very much like I never went to Boppers, but we had a friend in college who used to talk about going there. And I just think of it, it's perfect name for a club like that. But almost as good as Aquarius. Yeah, I just again, I think it's just what I enjoy about this is kind of a comfort food film for me because I just like the feel of it, even though it is kind of sad and you said hangdog. It's just, I like that feel. I think it works.
Mm-hmm. And part of heading into summer is this idea that we have the second grader, third grader, just unbridled joy that summer's here. And what we forget is that it removes a lot of our support structures and you have to quickly create new ones, and that's very difficult to do. And so having the yin and the yang together, seeing like, oh yeah, summer's not just unadulterated fun all the time.
It's a lot of hanging out. When you're younger, it is a lot of just hanging around, killing time, which is what you do. It's what you do if you work at an amusement park. It's what you do if you go to these, kind of cheesy nightclubs. Yeah, there's just kind of a lot of that.
Mm-hmm. One last question. Any final thoughts on the park manager's wife, Kristen Wiig?
Kristen Wiig, oh gosh, the moment where she puts when she tries to stretch out the banana inventory, or because they put, what did she do? She put the Google eyes on the
and
banana.
Then she puts the eye patch on it.
Yeah, no, I want, she needs her own story, right? We need to have a sequel that's just about the two of them, or maybe just about her. Because again, underutilized.
And not zany. This is not the Target lady.
No,
this is one of Kristen Wiig's weird, interior oddball characters, which she had some of.
Yeah, it seems like it must have been something that she had a big hand in kind of creating, and just a lot of the understated. But yeah, this is at a point when she's getting known on Saturday Night Live for all these wacky characters that are very broad. But yeah, I think she's great. The two of them are great. Mm-hmm. Love them together. Love them as a couple.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, that is it for Adventureland. How about this? Last time, you opened and closed Zoom Back's Camera Season 1. And last time you were on the show, you didn't take the actual questionnaire because it was being retooled and thought up until we found the actual document from Becky, Prue's younger sister, who developed a 5-question questionnaire to determine if you love movies.
Okay.
It is scientifically valid. Do you care to take it?
I think so. Yes, I will.
Okay. First question. What was your first R-rated movie?
So my first R-rated movie, I think I've told you this story before because I feel like I repeat myself all the time with you, is if we remember when Pam Wojcik talked to you about Pillow Talk, she was talking about watching movies on UHF stations in the greater Boston area. And in the late 1970s, there was a recognition that cable television, I'm guessing that there was a recognition that cable television was a threat. So they started to show movies uncut. and they decided to, it was around the time that The Deer Hunter had won the Best Picture Oscar. And I was allowed at the ripe old age of 9 or 10 years old to watch over 2 nights The Deer Hunter in its entirety.
A
And
mini series that,
they
okay.
miniseries it. Yeah, exactly. And that's like, and we've had another conversation about miniseries, which we won't get into, things like Helter Skelter, which were also very traumatic. But I totally got into it. And I can remember I had like a few friends from school who also got to watch it. So we used to entertain ourselves around that time by playing Vietnam War. We would build, shanties in our backyard and have Russian roulette sessions. It was really, it was a really healthy time.
God bless cable television.
That's before cable. That's UHF. That's
oh, sorry, UHF.
That's over the open airwaves, man.
Okay, what movie would you be compelled to buy, even though you may already own a copy of it, if you found it at Pickers Paradise for $2?
Well, I don't own it, but I would. So maybe this is the wrong answer, but I don't care. It's the Heartbreak Kid. The Heartbreak Kid, because it seems to come and go. I think right now, if you try to buy it on Amazon, it's like $149 or something. So I'd buy that. But I probably have like recorded it off of cable somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Good pickup. What is the best movie to watch on a second date?
Ooh. So I think my wife and I went to see Silence of the Lambs on a second date. And that was good because, I had seen it before, but I don't think she had. So the second date being, so it's our second date, but it helps to have something that you already know how it works. Because then you can be like, Silence of the Lambs at the time that it came out was very, it seemed very shocking and has all those little jump scares and things. So you get to be as the person taking the person on the date, the one who provides the comfort.
And you get it. I mean, you don't have to pay as close attention, so you can watch the person watching the movie and get a feel for who they are.
That's right.
That's a good kind of loophole side answer to the question. I like it. Okay, what is your favorite toppings for a pizza?
I have the very controversial a fondness for anchovies. And note that, an anchovy pizza is best enjoyed with no mozzarella on it.
Okay.
Sauce.
Elaine Roth last night had anchovy pizza as well.
Oh, she did. Well, she has good taste.
Mm-hmm. With extra cheese. No, I don't know.
If she likes it with cheese, I'm gonna school her on that. I'm gonna get her a pizza with no cheese and see how she likes it.
What is your favorite movie to watch while you eat an anchovy pizza on the couch?
Ooh, so it's got to be something that has a little bit of Italian spice to it. So I don't want to go with like the cliche thing of like The Godfather. But I might go with a little bit of like sentimentality and maybe something like Cinema Paradiso, which is something I've kind of forgotten about. I don't know how that would hold up for me now, but I'm envisioning that as kind of like the warm blanket that the pizza would provide. It kind of goes with that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay, last question. You are 10 years old. You receive a screener from the future. What film most blows your mind?
Oh, wow. Huh. Well, that's like right before I kind of get really into music videos. So like, we got cable TV, I think when I was 11 years old. And I spent most of that summer, in terms of like idle summers, I would be watching a lot of music videos. So maybe something like Stop Making Sense, which was kind of this amazing fusion of, great music, performance, and just having it all kind of click together.
Nice.
Because I was just about there at age 10, but I needed that extra push, and MTV kind of pulled me into that.
Mm-hmm. 1 second, I will do the calculations.
Hey.
And hey, It turns out you love movies.
That's good to know. I was
Becky
worried.
never lies.
I was worried. I was worried I was losing it. So thank you for the reassurance.
You are very welcome, and we loved having you on Zoom back camera. Thank you for
Ricky, before you let me go, I have to say you are amazing for putting all of this together, and I think giving people something to look forward to every night over the past however many weeks. I know we're going on hiatus. We're going on summer break, so we're going to have all this idle time to go hang out at Boppers or Aquarius. Well, actually, no, if they're open.
That's what I call my kitchen. It's my nightclub for one.
but kudos to you, Ricky, for really doing something that I think means a lot to a lot of people, more than you know. And this has been great.
Well, thank you. And big thanks as well to Kevin and Chris Manage, Lee, Tadashi, and Stacy in our marketing department, and all of yourself and all the other guest curators who allowed this to happen. It would not be much fun to hear me talk about a movie for an hour. And it was great to connect with people and actually share stories about movies they love and learn more about not only the movies that they love, but they themselves. So thank you very much for being our bookends on the season. And we look forward to Zoom Back Camera version 2.0.
School's out for summer.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.